Guys, I'm super excited to introduce you to Laura Williams. Laura is the founder of Authentic Learning Alliance and someone that I have followed on social media with great interest because she is such a positive driving force behind teachers everywhere. She has an amazing following, mainly because she puts out some incredible content. She has a commitment to helping not only teachers, but administrators understand the mission at hand, that we have a responsibility to these students to help drive them, to motivate them, to inspire them to be the best that they can be. And she follows that up by helping each individual that follows her know that they have that responsibility themselves. And she brings it out in a way that allows them to see what they have in terms of potential to really make that true ripple effect. She's doing some amazing stuff. I can't wait to dig in and learn more about the Authentic Learning Alliance and what motivated and inspired her to do what she's doing, but she's creating ripples all over the world. I'm so grateful that she agreed to be a part of the Ripple Effect podcast. So let's dive right in. Well, guys, I'm super excited to introduce you to Laura Williams. Laura is somebody that I've followed on social media for quite a while. I love her approach. She is such a genuine, authentic individual. And Laura, thank you for agreeing to be on the Ripple Effect podcast today. How are you doing today?
Hi, Steve. I'm well. Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Well, I am super excited. I want to start this interview. I've got a bajillion questions to ask you, but as I kind of always like to do with all of my podcast guests, I always like to get a little sense of origin story. You are making such a huge difference for teachers and administrators around the country. In fact, you're probably one of the people that I see on social media that just consistently shows up and puts a little bit of positivity out there for people to really think about and respond to, and it's just so refreshing. And so that's part of the reason that I've been so intrigued by your approach and what you do and the work that you do. But I'd really love to get a sense of kind of how you became who you are today, what you're doing with the work that you're doing with your company.
Yeah. Well, I always, as I get older, you realize like, wow, it's not just one thing that, made you who you are. It's many things. It's that tipping point to get you where you are, exactly where you are today. Um, so I don't know. I always think back to, childhood, right? We all do,
Yeah.
like we all have had past and like what makes us who we are. And like often it starts there. And I would say, apples don't fall far from trees. And so I was born to be an educator. I think I tried not to be. I went I tried to go a different direction, but it just sort of came back to me. But my parents were both educators. My mom was a math and science teacher. My dad was a drafting teacher that decided to go back and become a principal. And so I'm sure that they've brainwashed me in ways. But yeah, I mean, I think that that had a lot to do with it, just knowing, like being exposed to that career pathway at an early age. And then, um, like I think for me, I'll say this maybe has nothing to do with it, but like I was the youngest of my sisters. I have two older sisters, and then I have step siblings as well. And I'm kind of the baby of the
Yeah.
family. And I think because of that, like I didn't have a lot of like, like I was kind of free. Like I had freedom more than my sisters because like parents kind of have the hang of it. And so
Yep.
I always just learned by doing and like seeing what the big kids were doing and like going forth and trying new things. And so I think I've always had that my whole life, like learn by doing and just jump in and see what happens. So immersion is we'll probably talk about this, but like I think immersion experiences are where a lot of really good growth comes from in your life, like to be in it and to feel it and to understand it like at a visceral level versus
Yeah.
like just talking about it, you know.
I love that. Well, you and I have that in common. Actually, I was the last of four kids, and I was kind of the mistake child. So I came 10 years younger, or 10 years after my, next closest sibling. So I always like to say to, audiences when I speak that I was kind of I had the same freedom because my parents were old and they were tired by the time
Yes.
I came around.
Yes.
So I kind of got away with
Oh,
a lot of stuff. So you and I are very similar in that regard. But so tell me, so down your career path, right? So you had them as your influence. You decided to go into the classroom. You were a teacher to begin with, and then you got into consulting. How did that all come about?
Yeah. Well, so I when I went into the so let me think, where's the best place to start? My first time as a teacher um was actually kind of like because there was really nothing else I could do. So I lived and studied abroad in Costa Rica
Oh,
with
wow.
my first bachelor's degree, which was not education. I went the health studies track thinking, I'd be pre-med and maybe I would go into the health sciences. I wasn't quite sure. And so doing that and like realizing that wasn't for me, trying to like figure out what I wanted to do, I decided to like kind of switch paths a little bit. I had all this science under my belt and I'm like, well, what could I do with that? And so decided to do conservation biology. And I'm like, where's the best place to go do that? And so went to Costa Rica, which is a biodiversity hotspot for all the listeners. I
Yep.
highly recommend that if you can ever get a chance to go there. I would pick that place again. If I could do it again, I would pick that place. And I ended up moving there because I just loved it so much after I graduated. And so I couldn't find a job. That's jobless. And so I babysat. And then I ended up the job I could find was at a private bilingual school. And I was the gringa. So they
Yeah.
loved that, I had a bachelor's degree and I had English. And so that was a good combination. And
Yeah.
so trial by fire became a teacher in this young age, and honestly I didn't feel quite prepared for it, but I jumped right in, right? And you jump in with your whole heart and you try to do the best you can. And so I think it was one of the best things that's ever happened to me because I learned that I loved it.
Yeah.
And I learned that I wanted to be really good at it. I wanted to be a good teacher. And so after that year of trial by fire, making lots of mistakes, doing good things too, but like definitely mistakes in there, decided I wanted to be I wanted formal training. And so went back to school, got my master's in teaching, and that led me to more connections and staying in Iowa because my
Yeah.
school was in Iowa. And so I landed in a middle school classroom. And I always think like everything happens for a reason. Like you have
Yeah.
to like where I could have gone to any of any of these schools that I applied to, but I ended up going to this one particular school in Mount Pleasant, Iowa. And the leadership there was very interested in 21st century learning and like how can we move the bar, and we don't always have to do it the way we've always done it. And so I think that's why they hired me, because like I was like, they could tell like right then and there, this girl's not afraid to try
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
um and so that after that first year we decided to go for like a STEM redesign learning environment funding. So a grant, $50,000 match grant. And so we decided to do that, go for it, even though we were middle school and it, typically these go to high schools, but we were like, no,
Yeah.
let's redesign the middle school environment. And so I think the connections, the people that were part of that kind of helped, you know, get me involved, like
Yeah.
kind of, empowered me to take a little bit of leadership in that experience of like redesigning the classroom. And so that experience and getting the award, we got the award, redesigning the classroom, doing middle school differently was really fun. But that, because you're doing something different, people want to see like, hey, what are they doing over there? And
Yeah.
so having other schools come see, sharing the work, inspiring others, to do project-based learning and more collaborative teams, and how can we get our kids engaged, and how do we hit the mark for the students that have typically been disenfranchised by our system, not to
Yeah.
be dramatic, but it feels that way at times. um, and so that opened the door to meet more people and see what they're doing in those connections. And so word of mouth, like there's nothing greater than the power of a network, and meeting people that also want to do good things. And so they kind of were like, okay, we need to hire you as a consultant for our area education agencies.
Oh,
You should go
wow.
talk to more teachers. And so um, that's kind of where that transition happened, was just like being able to be a voice and to share this kind of learning and what does redesign learning look like, and authentic learning experiences is kind of where the work has now gone. And so that has led me to working with our statewide AEA system to do, we call it the clearinghouse for work-based learning. I don't know if work-based learning is my favorite term because it kind of sounds like kids don't like work. So they
Yeah.
like, oh, we don't want to do that.
Yeah.
But what it really is, it's really PBL on steroids. It's like projects with area partnerships. Kids get to be creative, they get to design things, they get to build things that really have a real impact for their communities or for the area business. And so um that's kind of like where it's gone to, I guess. I
Yeah.
don't know. That's
Yeah.
a lot of like benchmark moments in my life, but I'm sure there's more, but that's kind of how it, just kind of how it happened.
Well, so there's a lot to unpack there. I mean, obviously, you mentioned it a couple of times. A lot of connections, a lot of things had to fall into place at the right time for things to happen. I call those things ripples, right? When you look at, kind of like your
Yes.
timeline of your life, all these ripples that kind of had to happen in specific order, but really, at the time may come, when you think they're just random acts of kindness, or the random introductions or random events that occur, but really at the end of the day, it's like you set that ball in motion, and you end up at a school district, or happen to be at a school that's like open to this approach in this new direction, and you're coming in with a different set of ideas and perspectives that can really inform and really change things up, and then people recognize you for that, right, and see that you've got some not only the skills and the abilities to make it happen, but you're really good at talking about it. You're really good at bringing everybody else into the fold and getting them excited about it, which leads you down the consulting path, which I think is pretty exciting. So, was that a difficult transition for you to go from the classroom being in front of students day in and day out into a consulting environment, or did it feel like a natural fit for you?
Yeah. Well, I really debated the switch. I love being in the classroom. I honestly, like, at times I sometimes like think, should I, like, you know, go back to the classroom, because now that I've learned so much, like all the things I could bring back to the classroom with me would be really fun to do. But I feel like it's kind of like the ripples that you talk about, like where can I add the most value? And I think at this stage in my life, like I feel like um being a cheerleader to teachers and being a sidekick, like, let me
Yeah,
help you, let me be there for you, let me get what you need. I think maybe I can make more impact that way, like reach more, even though it's not directly, it's like an indirect impact that I think is needed.
sure.
I think there's like a lot of utility in the work that we do. And so if it can make a broader impact, then I'm like, I think that's what keeps me down this path, is like I think that I am making a broader impact. And so I don't know, I for any of the teachers listening that maybe you're thinking about consulting, or maybe going a different direction or pivoting a little bit there. um I think it's always good to, like, if that is something you're thinking about, try it. Like, you
Yeah,
won't know until you try it.
that's right.
Um, and I think it's very exciting work to do. And I don't think I regret changing it. And I think the reason why is I've really set myself up to build relationships with teachers, to be able to go and, like, go back into the classroom. Like, I
Hmm.
still have contact with students, and I don't ever want to lose that, because I feel like I don't ever want to forget what it's like.
Sure.
I also don't want to not know the cool terms of the day, like have some tea and, like whatever the colloquialisms are
Yeah.
of the day. Like, I want to stay fresh. So,
Yeah.
so getting back to the classroom is important to me. And so I think if it is important, I think you can make those things happen. Like, what are your non-negotiables, like with your career? And this is anybody's career. What are your non-negotiables? Like,
Yep.
what brings you joy? What makes you feel like you're contributing? Um, you make those happen, right? You get to choose that. And so I think finding joy in the work is something that you can be intentional about and set yourself up for that. So I feel like I've set myself up in that way to be able to do those things, but still have that broader impact that I desire.
Yeah. Well, you bring up a really good point, right? When you think about it, and that's really, part of what a good entrepreneur is, which is what you are with your organization now, is you really look at ways that you can leverage your skill sets and what you're really good at to now, when I think about it, you being in the classroom, you can impact that class, which is super important and critical. But now that's kind of a one to few, but now you can do one to many. And you've been really, really successful at that in terms of, if you just look at the number of followers you have on social media, the people that really engage with your posts, you have a voice that expands well beyond, even, probably what you anticipated when you launched, right? This is and that's what I love about it, is that you really are being able to touch so many with so many positive ideas, positive thoughts, and really encouragement. And I think, as you say to teachers who might think about this as a path, that, why not try it, right? There's so many. The thing that I see about education is there's so many talented teachers out there that are frustrated by the system and the approach, that are leaving the profession. And in my opinion, it blows me away that we have not figured out in this country that teachers should be some of the highest paid individuals out there, right? Because they are the
Amen.
superheroes. I mean, what you do and how you inform and guide and direct this generation of teachers, I think, is nothing short of spectacular. You're creating amazingly positive ripples. But at the end of the day, those that have maybe gotten frustrated with their local school districts or the career path that they're on, you don't have to give up on it. You're kind of proof of that, right? You can just alter that perspective a little bit and do things a little bit differently and still have that huge impact.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you know, going well, so two things. On one hand, like we have these systems in education, like there's things we can change and there's things we can't really change, right?
Right.
And so how do you make the best of it with what you have? And so I think having that positive outlook is going to serve you. If you're going to stew on what you can't change, you're going to be miserable. And so um yeah, but whereas, yes, we do need to pay teachers more, and that is something we can definitely advocate for and fight for, and like never not use our voices for. Like, I think it's really important to. I'm glad you said that, and like we're saying that on this podcast. Like, I think the more people understand and agree, like hopefully that can like change things, in each state, like to
Yeah,
value that more. But yeah, I mean, I think using your voice is a powerful thing to do, but I think it's like who you connect to and how you use it is really important, and that boils back to relationships. And I think
absolutely.
you've got to like make that a priority. And also it's the sanity piece too,
Yeah.
right? Like we're all in this together. We're in the trenches together. We might have a bad day, we might have a good day. Who do you talk to? Who do you go to? Who's lifting you up? Who's
Yeah.
cheering you on? And who are you cheering on? Like, I mean, I'm going to go back to like the ripples. Like who are we impacting on a day-to-day basis, and like how can we make it better for all of us in the trenches?
And that's a critical factor, right? And you touch on that in a way that I think is really important to reemphasize, is that, sometimes we need that network of people that we can depend on, people that'll, when we're having a bad day, or we've, had some challenges that are, that feel like they're insurmountable. We've gotten upset, with, the circumstances at our school district, and we're kind of, at wit's end. You need that group of people that will pick you up, dust you off, put you back in the game, and remind you why you're doing what you're doing, right? The mission is the kids. And then at the same time, you feel the best when you're actually able to do the same for someone else that's out there, not just necessarily somebody that's always having a bad day, but somebody that's like doing some great work, recognizing them for what they're doing. It's just very much like the classroom, right? When you can show attention and shine the light on somebody, especially like when you do it in the classroom with a student, they blossom, right? Because that
Oh
attention,
yeah.
that focus is so critical. But I see it in almost every profession that I work with, is we have this reluctance to do it, and teachers really need that, and they also need to give it, because they've got such great talent in order to, connect with another human being, and they do it every day with their students, but they also need to do it with one another as colleagues.
Yeah. What you're describing is what I would describe as the Mutual Admiration Society.
Yes.
You know, we've all got superpowers and strengths to bring to the table, and acknowledge that, because sometimes we don't know. And this is something only recently I really have feel like I really internalize and understand better, but like you don't always know what you're good at. Like personally, like I have, gone through life doing things, and like sometimes I did not get feedback, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
whether it was a good thing I did or a bad thing I did, or what have you, or neutral or whatever. But like I think sometimes shining a light on what others are good at can be the most profound thing you do for another human, because they may not know.
Yeah.
And again, I think we all want to add value and make an impact. And so we can serve as each other's, um, almost like guardrails to the work. Like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, you're doing really good, great job. Like, and then have those feel goods, and then come back even more energized because you're doing the thing. So
Yeah, it's so important. I mean, when you can kind of leverage that, those resources, it fills up your tank, but just by being a contributor, also creating those positive ripples for other people, it's another way to keep your tank topped off, right? So it's so important. So talking about positivity, you do an amazing job of putting something unique out every single day. It seems like a couple times a day to encourage people. Where does all that come from? I mean, where do you find the time, number one, and where do you get all these inspirational, the inspiration to make these posts?
yeah, it's weird because like really recently, friends have been like friends on Facebook, because I'll post. So I do post the same one. Like I'll do a screenshot of what I post on X,
Yeah,
on Twitter.
Twitter, X, whatever it
Like,
is.
I wanna keep, like, if I call it X, will people know? And then,
Yeah,
like, if I don't, when I post on Twitter/X, um, I take a screenshot and I put on Facebook. I don't get many likes on Facebook.
yeah,
I get, like, maybe 4 or 5, but the one that I always get is my dad, and
yeah,
so I put it on there. I honestly put it on there for him, and he told me that yesterday. He asked me about it too, like, "How do you think about," like, he goes, "You're my daily guru, Laura." And I'm like, "Thank you, dad."
uh,
So I
what
do
a
that for him.
compliment. I mean, that's
Yeah,
huge. Yeah,
I know. It made me feel so good. But yeah, so thinking about like sharing this process with folks, I every night before bed, I reflect back on my day, and I kind of think through, what are those things that, you know, I believe to be true, or what's a pep talk to myself. Sometimes it's a pep talk to myself, or I know other people are going through this. What might be a pep talk for others? And like acknowledging, like, we're all humans and we're all in this together. And like, for better or for worse, like, we are all on this planet at this very time, and we're more connected than ever. And so, um, I kind of think like that. And I think some of the stuff that comes out is surely from my life's experiences and
yeah,
things other wise people have shared with me or have grown in me. Sometimes I feel like I'm my mother, like things my mom has said to me growing up, or my dad or my stepdad, or trying to channel, those the wisdom that came before me, but that I'm finding in my own life to be true, like, oh, that is true. Or um and then also I think some of my own personal like endeavors of things I enjoy and study kind of come out in that too. And I definitely like I love the Dalai Lama, and I love reading about Buddhism and different monks and different things that they have said to like help with suffering, right? Like we
yeah,
all, like,
yep,
that's one of the beliefs, is that no one is shielded from suffering. And so how can we suffer less? And so I don't know. I always think about that. I think about my biology background and how scientifically, altruism is the way, friends. Like we're going to live a lot longer if we subscribe to altruism versus like a competitive, you know, just in it for yourself. This is more of a musketeers model, like all for one, like
yep,
um and so Yeah, I don't know. I think it's partly my spiritual my spiritual beliefs, but then I mix that with a little bit of like, well, evolution, says that like species that are more altruistic will stand the test of time, right? Like we're going to
Yeah.
survive better, we're going to have better fitness, all that good stuff. And so just combining those things. And I will say this is kind of neat. Um, there was a professor, I'll throw this out there because if you Google him, he's like, I don't even know where he's at these days, but Professor Jay Holstein, he taught a class called Quest for Human Destiny, and I have never been the same since. Some of the things that we've talked about and unpacked, and like, I don't know, but ultimately, it's a people endeavor. And
Yeah.
so I think through, like, what are we all kind of experiencing and like trying to bring visibility to that
Yeah.
so that it's that meta cognitive piece of like, we're not alone. This is a very human thing that I'm experiencing.
Yep.
And so I don't know. I think that's so yes, every night to answer your question better, every night I kind of reflect on that and try to put it together in kind kind of a journal entry ish,
Hmm.
but also a little bit of sometimes you might notice a little bit of poetry. I used to write a lot of poetry, and so sometimes I try to have fun with the word pairings and like the sound that it
Yeah.
makes. So I think through that a little bit. So it's kind of a creative outlet too.
Well, you do an amazing job with it, and we're going to put a link to your Twitter or your X or
Whatever
whatever
it's
we
called.
call it, right? We'll put that up there because people just need to follow it because you are really really good at it. So
Oh,
I really just want to acknowledge that and pay it high praise because you do a phenomenal job. And you inspire so many, and you can tell just by how many people retweet and how many people like it. It's got to be. It's making a really huge impact out there, and I'm certainly in awe of it. The
oh,
thing that I really want to make sure that we cover in this is the fact that you've moved in this direction of consulting. So tell me about Authentic Learning Alliance. Tell me, just give us kind of a sense of what that is and
oh,
what you've been able to accomplish with this organization that you've created.
sure. I
First
mean,
of all, congratulations, by the way. I mean, yeah,
yeah, it's
that's
a
such an
risk.
amazing accomplishment.
Yeah. It's a risk that I took. And I honestly probably wouldn't have done it unless I looked at life a little bit differently. I had a really sad moment in my life. Um, I think it was one of those things that like you really like in retrospect, it really made me grow and like want to grasp onto life more and like live more and like follow my wild heart more. And so,
Yeah.
Authentic Learning Alliance is kind of a manifestation of something I've been thinking about for quite some time, but just never had the guts or the confidence or, like to really like pursue it. And so, after some of these like things happened in my life, it was just like time to like, no, like, what are you waiting for? You only live once, and like, why would you hold back? And like, you can do this. And so my day job, I love my job, I love my day job. I'm not leaving my day job by any means. And I work for the Iowa area education agencies, and so we support schools all over Iowa. And I love this work that I do with that clearinghouse for work-based learning and doing
Yep.
projects and with partners, like trying to bring opportunities for kids because you see how powerful it is and the impact that it makes. I love that work. And so through that work, I learned about sort of some business industry standard practices, one of which is also game changing and life changing, is this idea of an agile mindset, but also agile project management.
Yep.
And so, because of learning that, I became a certified Scrum Master.
Ooh,
Um,
nice.
yes,
Congratulations.
I have some certs. I am
Yeah.
a certified product owner. Shout out to John Miller, who does a really wonderful class through Agile Classrooms. Um, but through that, it almost gave me the toolkit to empower. So I learned it because I wanted to empower students and teachers. I wanted them to take their projects to the next level, actually implement them and get them off the ground. Well, we need strategies to do that. And so I kind of subscribe to the Agile Scrum Kool-Aid on how to operationalize these projects. Well, when you teach it and you start to drink that Kool-Aid, it's like, well, why am I not being empowered by this mindset and
Yeah.
this framework? And so well, actually it was during the pandemic. I kind of played around with that idea of like, what's my passion? Like, what can I pursue? And so during the pandemic with schools closed and like, work was a little bit slower, had some time. And so this is kind of funny, but my, I have a popcorn machine right there. I decided to start a at-home gourmet, um, popcorn business, like just for
Yeah.
fun, really like a hobby. I called it hobby popping and like trying to like find flavors that were good and like create, creative titles. Like I have a popcorn that I call Hasta la Chisa. It's just cheese popcorn, but like have fun with it, right?
Oh yeah. All right. Yeah. I
Um,
love it.
yeah. Yeah. And then I have, oh, here's another one. Caramel me later. Like call me later, but like caramel popcorn. Yeah, anyway.
Oh,
So
that's
I
awesome.
had some fun with that. But I also did it because when I do professional learning, I always like to bring popcorn.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like a win-win. Like I'll get really good at popping corn. So then when I do professional learning, I'll bring popcorn, but then maybe I can have a little side hustle and sell popcorn to my neighbors and
Yeah.
things like that. And so that was practice for me. I actually opened up an LLC. I learned how to like start a business. I learned about taxes. It was kind of like getting my feet wet. Like
Yeah.
I didn't I didn't want to be like a popcorn mogul or anything like that. It was just for fun. And so from that experience and really thinking about like with some of those things that happened in my life, like what do I really like, what's my direction, and like really spending some time thinking about that. I decided to essentially like on my time, like what could I do to contribute back beyond Iowa? And so that's where the Authentic Learning Alliance kind of came. Like, how do I connect to, on one hand, how do I connect Iowa educators to other educators outside of Iowa? So that's like
Yeah.
kind of a win-win for my day job. Like, how do I expand and connect?
Yeah.
And so through
You're
that, I was
rippling
able to
through your
connect.
connections, right? I
Yes,
mean, yeah.
rippling, yes, rippling through. And then, also like I have this creative outlet and desire to like bring agility, authentic projects to schools beyond Iowa. And so that's kind of the sort of my consultant role is like with other schools outside of Iowa is like, how can I help them move the bar with authentic learning and agility? And then also include them and like bring them into the network and like, we can all be friends, right? Like there's no borders anymore. We're all like connected and through the internet. Um, so yeah, that's kind of I would say, gosh, so that was 2022. So like, this is a very baby, business
Yeah.
and really just getting started. And I've had some great opportunities, had the chance to be a keynote for a primary school in Scotland. It was virtual. I didn't get to go, but, I will someday. So just, creating relationships and meeting awesome people as I go. And I'm not trying to like rush it or
Yeah.
anything. Like, I do want to get, I want to get the word out, right? Like, hey, there's this really fun professional learning experience, that you could do. I do immersion experience. So I take teachers through the actual, like a real project, with a real partner, and they kind of go through that and experience it. And it's really fun. Like they get to be creative, they get to develop something. And then I also complement that with agile classrooms. So
Yeah.
they get to learn like about I call it a scrum board. You can call it a learning canvas, an agile project canvas. A simple term is just a scrum board. Actually, you can kind of see I just cleared it off for the
Oh,
new work
nice.
here, but to do,
To
doing,
do,
and done,
doing, and done. I love it. Yeah.
and then crazy ideas.
Yeah. I love
Gotta
it.
have a crazy idea. So like teaching those agile tools for
Yeah.
teachers to use to help guide learning. I teach in agile classrooms. I'm a certified agile classrooms teacher trainer. So I teach teachers sort of that framework and try to connect them to the authentic learning. And so that's kind
So
of
like, do you
the
ever
life.
sleep? I got to ask that question.
I'm sure my friends and colleagues are like, what is with her? Like, she's always doing something. Going back to school, which people are like, you are gonna cry. And I have a 5-year-old. So like all that combined, I have to have project management or I wouldn't be able to do.
Yeah.
Maybe that is the testament. I was not this busy a couple years ago. But
Yep.
now that I have these tools that are very empowering and freeing, like I feel like I can use my time better and like get more things done.
That's all.
I know.
You
And I'm
make
a
me tired
busybody.
just listening to you. I mean, you've got
I
so much
know, I'm
awesome
sorry.
stuff going on.
Ugh,
Well, I
yeah.
mean, you are very impressive. I mean, I really, really am truly in awe of all that you're doing. And I knew a little bit about that, but I love to see because you can see it. For those of you that are going to catch this on the audio version of the podcast, you got to go to the YouTube and just kind of see Laura's eyes light up when she talks about this. But you can see it literally just like a
Aw.
switch. Like when you're really passionate about something and you're doing the work that you're destined to do, you can tell even though we're in the, kind of a Zoom call, right? I can tell that like the energy just comes across and it's inspiring. So well
Aw,
done.
you.
Well,
Appreciate that. Nice to
so I
hear.
could I could talk to you all day, but I know you're busy and I want to be respectful of your time, but I had a couple of Ripple connection questions I wanted to put forward if you're open to it.
Yeah, for sure.
So what is the best piece of advice you ever received and how do you use it?
Oh, that is tough. Let me like I need like some do we have wait time? Let me
Yeah.
wrap my best piece of advice. Um, I think it's just the awareness that, we're all on our own journeys. I think it's just the awareness that I think this has served me well. Like, don't jump to conclusions. It's not always about you. Um,
That's
I
great.
think
Yeah.
I think well, because it's a people endeavor and people are buggy. And I mean that
Yeah.
with I'm buggy, you're buggy, we're all but like we
We're
all
all
have our
buggy.
own
Yeah.
yeah, we're all buggy. Like understanding that um can really free some of the stress in your life, especially when you're worried about what others think or what, like we're all kind of treading like in this like, fishbowl, like hopefully I didn't, make you mad or this or that. I think opening up the channels of communication and really trying to articulate and just understanding like, hey, we're all people, we're all humans, and that's okay.
Yeah.
We're gonna mess up. I think that just being acknowledging that and being open to that and then not worrying about what other people think of you is
Yeah.
like for someone who I'm very empathetic and I often find myself like, oh, are you okay? Like thinking about what are they thinking about? Like I
Yeah.
worry and I care. But it's like I think that's a good thing. It's good to care about people, but I think it's like you are in control of you, they are in control of them, and we're all on this journey and like how can we make it better together? I don't
Yeah.
know if that's good advice per se. I think it's more of a mindset maybe, but I think that has served me well as an adult for
Yeah.
sure.
I think it's excellent advice. I think people will definitely take something that they can apply there, and you've got some inspirational words that you wrap around that and really help people understand where you're coming from. What have you learned from failure? Because I know you're a rock star at what you do day in and day out, but I mean I'm sure there were some missteps along the way. So was there a particular failure that you ended up learning from?
Yeah. Well, you try to go for things and maybe it doesn't land or even, you know, even relationships can fail, right?
Yep.
And so I think if I think through some of my big failures, um I think it's always good to learn from those like and there are like maybe the big picture is this. There are lessons from those failures that you don't just sweep them under the rug.
Yeah.
Those failures tell you something about yourself.
Yep.
They tell you something about the world around you. They can tell you about some of the people that you work with at times. So I look at failures more like guardrails. It if this didn't pan out, then it wasn't supposed to.
Yeah.
And so, and I really believe that even if it's something you really, really desired and really wanted it and it didn't work out, ultimately it is a guardrail to shed some light on the path you are supposed to take.
Yep.
Um, and honestly, like it might hurt and sting for a while, whatever it is. And that's
Yeah.
you can't blame yourself for feeling that, because that's just, you feel what you feel.
Yeah.
And so acknowledge that feeling, but then plan for success. Like what's our next best step to get us to where we need to go or where we should be going. And so it's a guardrail. It'll just
Yeah.
it'll bump you to the direction you're supposed to be going.
Yeah.
It won't feel like it in the moment, but when you look back, it
Yeah.
is absolutely true. I find that to be true.
I love that. That's fantastic. If you were going to put a billboard up for every teacher in America to see, what would that message be on the billboard?
No, I don't know. What would that be? I just made some fun stickers like to put
Yeah.
on laptops to give to teachers. One of them is agile party always. So like that would be kind of a funny billboard. Oh, this is going to be one of those things I think about before bed tonight for a post, probably. Um, hmm, maybe something like, you get to be somebody else's impediment crusher.
Oh, I
I
like
think I
that.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
You get to be somebody else's impediment crusher. You get to help other people.
That is like one of the best answers I've ever heard. So I love that.
Oh,
That's
really?
really good. Yeah. Yep.
Thank
You,
you. Yeah.
you definitely get a gold star for that one for sure.
If I think of others, I'll let you know, but that's what I'm going with today.
That's a good one. I love it. Okay. Last two questions. So what does the ripple effect mean to you?
Well, I mean, the I think it's like casting your line, right? Like
Yeah.
you never know what will come back. So I think it's always putting your best foot forward. It's always I do think when I think of ripple effect, I do think of kindness. I do think we need to spread that. One smile or kind gesture or a phone call or just something that is not a lot of, didn't take you very much energy, might actually be something that changes a trajectory.
Yep.
And so to me, that's how I envision the ripple effect, is like, what are you putting out there that might, change for the better, hopefully for the better, right?
Yeah.
Someone's outlook, someone's life, for that matter. In education, it's students. Like teachers are, ripple makers. Like
Yeah.
every single day there's a chance to change a trajectory. And so yeah, that's kind of how I envision it.
I love it. I mean, I definitely think you are what I call a super rippler. I mean, you are someone that's out there making a huge, huge
Love it.
impact out there in the world and casting some pretty large stones and creating some positive, really powerful and positive ripples out there. But like you said, those ripples always come back to you in unexpected ways, right? And they really do make
Oh,
an
yes.
impact. So, last question: what ripple can I be creating for you?
Oh no, I don't know. Um, I think you're doing it. I think honestly, I think it takes a lot to put yourself out there and do podcasts and have these conversations. And I admire you. I admire other podcasters out there like that are doing this work, and you do it honestly for like to get other people's stories out there. I think that's awesome. And I think, keep doing that. That's so important. Get the stories out. Keep
Deal. Well,
talking.
I can do that.
Yeah.
I can do that. No problem. And I am so grateful to be able to get your story out. So, just really quickly, how would you like people to follow you and learn about your work? Obviously, authenticlearningalliance.org is your website, but are there other channels you'd like people to follow you on?
I mean, I would say I'm most active on Twitter X. I can't, it's so hard to like not call it Twitter.
Or just
Um,
call it a Twitter. That's what it is. I mean,
yeah, yeah, we know. Yeah.
we know.
Um,
Yeah, we're old school.
we,
We're kicking it that way.
that's right. That's how we know. Like the young kids will be like, what's
What?
Twitter? um, Yeah, so I'd say Twitter is great. I often post, obviously like the daily sort of affirmations, my journal entry,
Yep.
motivation, hashtag be a motivator. I often do that, but I also put out resources and things that I create. A lot of the resources I don't chart, like I don't, that's not my business. I make them and give them out. Like
Yep.
they're free to use the resources that I put together. I'm excited for people to use them. In fact, if you hear this and you find a resource that I put out there and you use it, tell me about it. I want to like toot your horn and promote you and like share like the good work you're doing. So yeah, I would say that. And then email is a great way to get a hold of me. Like if you want to have a conversation or you need a pep talk, or I don't know, you're thinking about professional learning for your school. And when I say professional learning, I mean not your grandmother's professional learning. This is different.
This is way
Um,
different. Well, so
I'm
you tell everybody your handle for Twitter, X, and
yeah.
your email if you're
Yep.
willing to
So
share.
it's at Mrs. Williams 21C is my handle. And then my email is Laura at authenticlearningalliance.org.
Awesome.
And so, yeah, those are the best way. You can direct message me on Twitter. That's probably, honestly, that's the easiest way. I think that's really opened up communication for a lot of these change agents out there, edutants, to just
If
sort of DM and be like, hey, what are you doing? Can you help me with this?
I love it.
So,
Well, we're definitely going to get this out to all the educators. I've got a lot that follow me on Twitter, not as many as you, but I'm going to definitely the ones that don't know you. I'm going to be like, hey, you got to follow Laura for sure. And Laura, I'm
oh,
so
thank
grateful for us to have this time together. I appreciate your honesty and your approach to just everything that you do. And you, like I said earlier, I mean, you are definitely a super rippler. You're making a huge difference in this world. I'm so grateful to know you, and I'm so grateful for our friendship. And I can't
oh,
wait to see what you do next. And, we will definitely have you back on because there's so much more that I didn't get to that I really want to ask you about. But I
sure.
really, really do appreciate the time. And I just want to thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me. Giving me this opportunity. Honestly, it's a great way for me to like hone in on podcasts. I feel like podcasts are a work in progress for me. I'm like, where do I begin? Like it
Yep.
helps me focus and like reflect too. So I really appreciate the opportunity to do that.
Of course. Well, I mean, you're an awesome guest, so you make it easy. So, anyway, I want to thank everybody for joining us for this episode of the Ripple Effect podcast. We'll be back again with another episode. But until then, Laura, ripple on.
Awesome. Ripple on.